and welcome to the program, Mountaineer Farm Talk. My name is JJ Barrett. I'm the Extension Agent for Agriculture and Natural Resources right here in Wood County, West Virginia. And I have my co-host with the most, Evan Wilson from Cabell and Wayne. Evan, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, JJ. Excited to learn about some of our heritage and heirloom beans here in Appalachia.
Oh yeah, everybody loves beans. And also we have with our Mountaineer Farm Talk team, Brandy Brabham over in Roane County. What's up, Brandy?
Oh, just enjoying the sunshine and the warm weather ahead. Lots of plans
Good.
this weekend.
Brandy, it was 10:01 when you logged on.
I know. I looked at my
You owe me Starbucks. Okay. Well, as we get started here, we want to welcome our special guest. We have Bill Best with the Sustainable Mountain Ag Program. He's from over Berea, Kentucky at Berea College. How are you doing this morning, Bill?
I'm doing fine.
Good. And of course, we have our own, the one and only Dr. Lewis Jett. Lewis, how are you doing this morning?
Oh, really good, really good. Good to see y'all. Good to see Bill. Good to see Bill.
Good. We have an exciting program here. We're going to talk about, of course, Bill Best is the author of 2 books. And correct me here, Bill, Saving Seeds, Preserving Taste, and
That's
then
right.
Heirloom Seeds in Kentucky. And he, of course, has been involved for a couple decades with that Sustainable Mountain Ag Program. And of course, Dr. Lewis Jett has done several research projects with these heirloom beans. Real quick before we get started, I will, of course, do our commodity minute for April 22nd. Of course, all of our commodities are at record highs. Corn is at $7.81, soybeans are at $17.09, and wheat is at a record $10.70. Also in the livestock market at Mount Hope auction, 40 to 60 pound lambs are at a record $4.40 to $5 a pound, and 100 to 130 pound lambs are at $2.55 to $3.65. At Jackson County Regional Livestock over in Ripley, 500 pound steers are $1.60 to $1.98, and heifers 500 pounders are at $1.28 to $1.38. Calf pairs sold for $1,460, and slaughter cows are at $61 to $90. A couple things in the news. Weather patterns may change this summer through the United States and for the growing season. La Nina may be taking over. What does this mean for American agriculture? Maybe it continue with drier conditions out west and cooler and wetter in the eastern states. So that's our little commodity minute. Now let's start with Bill, of course, as our special guest here. Can you tell us a little bit about why you started that Sustainable Mountain Ag Center at Berea College?
Well, I had been growing heirloom beans and tomatoes since '73 for the farmers market in Lexington, and since '74 for the farmers market in Berea. And I had actually been growing them since '63 when I had my first garden here in Kentucky in '62. And for the first time in my life, I'd bought some commercial seeds, and I was sorely disappointed with them. I bought what was at that time a new bean variety called Blue Lake, and I let it get full the way we had let our beans at home in North Carolina get full. And then I discovered they were too tough to eat. It was like eating cardboard. And so when we were at home in North Carolina for Thanksgiving, I told my story to my mother, and she said, I think I can solve that problem. And so she gave me a bunch of the bean varieties that I had grown up with in Western North Carolina, and that got me started. I've been growing them ever since. And then I discovered that both farmers markets that I work in with, the heirlooms immediately became an instant success. And people in Lexington who had migrated there from Eastern Kentucky started bringing me seeds from their families, their family beans, and we started growing them as well. And then as things materialized and developed, my son and I, along with 3 or 4 other Berea graduates, decided to start an organization to promote and distribute heirloom seeds. And we started with a lot of bean varieties, a lot of tomato varieties, and the candy roaster, which is a very long winter squash weighing up to 50 pounds, native to North Georgia, Western North Carolina, and East Tennessee. And the rest is history. We've sent seeds to all 50 states, all provinces in Canada, most Western European countries, and a few Eastern European countries, Australia and New Zealand. And they've done well everywhere, which pleases us.
Yeah, Bill, maybe we'll start with maybe the heart of the matter. Why do you think that in general your heirloom beans have such a different flavor, I guess, than some of our newer commercial varieties?
Well, let's face the facts. The commercial varieties were developed for long distance shipping, mechanical harvest, long shelf life, and in the case of tomatoes, being picked green and then treated with gas and to color them, but not ripen them. And the flavor is just simply non-existent. And in the case of beans, they were developed for mechanical harvest, and they were straightened. And your traditional Appalachian beans have a slight curvature, especially as they mature and the beans fill out the
pods,
the forms and the pods, and so they would shatter during mechanical harvest. So I mean, the modern plant breeding is designed to remove texture and nutrition from beans and tomatoes. And
yeah,
I think that's why we had to go back to heirlooms. We had no choice.
yeah, Bill, what are you more of a fan of the pole beans or the half runners?
Well, of course, half runners are pole beans too. We've got half runners that will go up to 14 feet. And what I've said about the difference in half runners and full runners is that half runners run up to 10 feet usually, and full runners run probably up to 30 feet. I've had them go to the top of my high tunnel and back down at 13 feet and back down. So they would be, and they tremendous yield. The bush beans just have practically no yield, and the pole beans will yield 10 times as many beans as bush beans.
What's your the most popular of those heirloom pole bean varieties? Which one's the most popular, and why do you think that is true?
The lazy wife is the most popular greasy bean, and the non-tough half runner is their most popular half runner. And it came to me as a mute over 20 years ago from a bean that I had from Breathitt County, Kentucky. And it's our best seller all around the world. It's very highly productive, very tender, and it makes good leather breeches, as you say in West Virginia, and we say in Western North Carolina, or shuck beans, or shucky beans, as is commonly known in Kentucky, and 2 counties in Clinton and Wayne in Kentucky, and the adjoining counties in Tennessee. Dried beans are called fodder beans, but they're all very good, except you don't typically use fall beans to make shuck beans out of, but the non-tough half runners make excellent shuck beans. And we recently sold some to the leather breeches to a lady in and Oregon, who just happens to be Chuck Yeager's daughter-in-law. And Chuck Yeager, I think, is still pretty well known in West Virginia, is he not?
That's true. He is still pretty famous here. I want to move to Dr. Jet real quick. Lewis, tell us a little bit about the varieties that you grew and your research program up there at WVU, the ones that you created the trellis system for, and then end up selling there to farmers markets.
Yeah, I sort of learned from Bill. I mean, when Bill came to the Small Farms Conference in West Virginia a few years back, and actually came a couple times to the Small Farms Conference, introduced some of the old time Appalachian beans to new people, new gardeners, and I knew some of them. You know, I knew some of these varieties, but I was really interested to learn on some of the varieties that his seed company was selling. It was kind of the same dilemma that we had here in West Virginia. Bill had from his own personal experience, whereas people wanted to grow these old time beans, particularly the half runner beans, but they were getting tough hauls. And we needed to go back and look at some of the heirloom or heritage varieties and see if we can find a variety that was adapted to Appalachia or was saved within Appalachia. So that's what we sort of focused on, is going back and finding a good tender haul half runner bean. We also looked at some pole beans, but in our trial we were looking at a way to sort of make these heirloom beans commercially productive. So we just sort of redesigned the trellis on how they're picked, so that the trellis sort of angles out about 35, 40 degrees, and you just sort of, the beans hang down out of the canopy, and you just come down to the row and you just with your basket, your bushel basket or whatever, and you just pick the beans that are just hanging down. So we felt one of the reasons why these beans were not widely grown or widely available was it was just so much labor involved in growing them. And so by redesigning the trellis, we just improved harvest efficiency by about 50%. And actually by opening up the canopy more to sunlight, by splitting the canopy into two, we did a V-shaped trellis, or we just did a single panel trellis. We actually increased the sun exposure to the vine so there was more yield. So the varieties that Bill had in his company, you know, SMAC had, like the Josephine Jackson half runner, the non-tough that Bill described. These were top yielders. I mean, they significantly out yielded the state half runner, which has been one of the most disappointing half runners here in West Virginia. Even out yielded the Mountaineer half runner. There's still some strains of Mountaineer half runner that are pretty good, but the non-tough and the Jackson were really great. We had some brown seeded half runners from some seed savers here in West Virginia. We just called them brown half runners. They did real well. They were small pods, but you know, we just took what Bill has been doing for years and just said, well, can we adapt this to a commercial production system? And it worked. I mean, we were able to grow these things efficiently. The only disadvantage and sort of the hidden problem here is the string on these beans. So, you know, they taste great. They're high yielding. They out yield bush beans, you know, 10-1, but you still have a string. So there's that issue. But what we found, and I think Bill probably maybe has found this too down in Eastern Kentucky, is that some of these heirloom varieties of beans, when they're grown in the summer months, you know, or even in fall, when it's a little bit cooler, they don't get a tough string with them. And so that not only do they not have the tough pods, but they also don't get a really significant string. So, you know, unlike the old, you know, the half runners that people were getting from other, you know, seed supply companies that were really disappointing, you know, weren't yielding well and were just flat potted, no beans in them. These varieties that Bill was selling were excellent. And we just found out a way to improve their harvest efficiency out in the field and also in the high tunnel. So but we also had, we did the Larry Phillips half runner, which was good. I know Bill carries that, and we had some other white seeded half runners that were unnamed, but the Jackson and the non-tough out yielded them all. Even the blue tip half runner, I know Bill carries some of those lines. The non-tough is a bigger pod half runner. It's a meatier bean. But the Josephine Jackson, and Bill I know knows the history of it more than I do, but it's a more slender pod half runner, and it kind of looks like a replacement for the Mountaineer half runner. It kind of looks like a Mountaineer half runner. So I was really happy. I mean, we had some really great results, and we're doing the economics on them. But we have people growing these half runners in high tunnels now for early production. So they're using these trellises in these high tunnels. So you can go to our publication. One of our publications is with the Crop Diversification Center down at University of Kentucky that describes our project and the trellises and how they worked and all that, but also, what were the best varieties and everything. So if somebody wants to read more about our bean project, our Heritage Bean Project, which was funded by the SARE, Northeast SARE organization, they can go to the Center for Crop Diversification and download that publication.
Yeah, or Lewis, can you send a link of that to Evan, and we'll put that up on the Facebook page of that publication. I want to move back to Bill just for a minute. I was looking over the website, heirlooms.org is where you can find all this information. What is the meaning of cornfield beans? I found that interesting.
Well, the corn stalks, the Indians had three sisters, corn, beans, and squash. And in my first book, excuse me, no, my second book, and I'll hold it up here. Gwen Henderson, this Kentucky state archaeologist, wrote the introduction to that, and she takes bean saving. She takes seed saving in Kentucky back 3,500 years. Beans were the last to come in to Kentucky about 800 years ago, and she says that beans, the corn stalks are the engine of the system. They provide the stalk, the stick for the beans to grow on. The beans provide the nitrogen for the corn and the gorge, not the gorge, but the squash running on the ground. And then the three of them provide a near perfect meal, which sometimes in the mountains is called succotash. But anyhow, the cornfield, all of your climbing beans at one time were grown in cornfields. And then when a lot of people, a lot of gardeners stopped growing corn, they started sticking them, and then they became known as stick beans or pole beans. And now most of us have gone to trellises. I guess we can start calling them trellis beans as well. So cornfield beans, stick beans, pole beans, trellis beans, they're all the same. They're all climbing beans. And as was said earlier, they can produce 10 times, if not more, what your bush beans can. The bush beans were sort of designed for people who don't like to trellis or put poles or corn in their beans, but they were also not very nourishing either. The beans provided a lot of mountain people with their source of protein in the winter. Fall beans and shuck beans, and they just, the meat wasn't always available, either deer or turkey or hogs or beef or whatever. It wasn't always available, but that the protein in beans, if you were a good steward of your soul, could always be available. And
Yeah, Bill,
when I was growing up, we ate leather britches. We put a big pot of them on, my mother would, and then they'd just reheat them all week. She cooked them with fat back. My wife cooks them with bacon. My sister used to cook them with olive oil, but whatever you want to use to season your beans with.
Bill, what's the difference between a greasy bean and a non-greasy bean? What's the lingo there?
Greasy beans are slick. They don't have the hair. If you will examine the more common bean, look at it under a microscope, and the knit, there's a fuzzy knit type on it, and greasy beans look like they've been dropped in oil. Probably a mutation, but we know they've been probably grown for 1,000. Well, we don't know when the mutation took place, but let me show you a picture of what greasy beans look like. I don't know whether this can show up or not.
Is that from one of your books?
This is from the Kentucky book, right?
Oh, okay.
And I want to show you one other photograph. These are carbonized beans on one side. Those are 800 years old. Comparison, when I started working with the archaeologists of the state of Kentucky, we discovered that we were still growing the same 4 types that the Indians were growing 800 years ago. And the other side here, this is the Frank Barnett cut short. Cut short is the most nutritious of all heirloom beans, and it's where the seeds outgrow the pod and they square off on the ends, if you can see that. They square off on the ends, and they're called cut shorts because they're cut short. In the same way that the Crowder peas are crowded in the hull, that's why they're called Crowder. But we have always called beans that crowd in the hull cut shorts. But they're very popular, and they're among our most popular varieties that we sell on the internet.
Yeah, Bill, the one of the questions that I sent you kind of fascinates me anyways. What makes a lot of these heirlooms so unique compared to a lot of our, well, what we say were improved or commercial varieties that are, of course, hybrids that we've developed? What makes them so unique, and what you think that are actually maybe better and more nutritious than the ones that we have?
Well, the seed is allowed to appear. The modern bean is protein free. And if you want a protein free bean, you can buy the modern beans and pick them while they're young and tender, as they suggest to you on as in their descriptions of their seeds. But if you'll notice, if you pick up the seed catalog, notice all the beans are perfectly straight, and we are admonished to pick while young and tender. What they don't tell you is if you don't pick them, then they'll get tough. And certainly they don't tell you that they're protein free. And I think that's the worst tragedy of all, is that they're protein free.
Is that why a lot of the beans here, a lot of times we will cook them till they're almost mush in the crock pot? Is that because they're so tough and we want to make sure that we could eat them?
Yeah, and you still might not be able to eat them. I went to a banquet in Berea College once, and they served those long neon colored green beans, and I couldn't put a fork in it, and I couldn't cut it with a knife, so I finally picked it up and put it in my mouth and chewed on it and chewed on it and chewed on it, and finally decided I couldn't get it ready to swallow, so I took it out of my mouth and put it on the side of the plate, very discreetly, of course. And at the end of the banquet, I did a scientific experiment. Went around to all of the tables before the waiters had come to pick up the plates and discovered that no one had been able to eat those beans. And that's the story, a very graphic story of the modern bean. I mean, it's useless for nutritional purposes.
Yeah, I want to move back to Lewis for a minute. As part of WVU Extension for small farms, we're always trying to focus on profitability. Is there a lot of potential for these beans to be for small farms? They could be harvested and either sold at the farmer's market or even sold fresh.
Yeah, I it's interesting because I just did an article on U-pick farms in the state, and beans are a U-pick crop. We have some farms in the state that have people come from the public to come to the farm to pick. So normally that's strawberries and blueberries, but in Appalachia, there's still a customer base for people coming to farms to pick beans. Okay, why? Because they know what good beans are. I mean, they know what these old time beans are like. They want them. They can't find them at the grocery store. It's like Bill's saying, they're not commercially grown. They're not shipped in. So that's where our edge is. I mean, we've got an advantage to grow our own varieties that are adapted to Appalachia and sell it to our own neighbors, but also people that come into the state to visit, and want a taste of Appalachia. So they want a taste of Appalachia, try some of our beans and other things that we grow here. But again, you get back to the issue of labor. It's a high labor crop. I mean, we tried to trim the labor costs down on it, but people are willing to trade labor for a little bit lower price per pound. So, we have some folks that are selling U-pick beans for less than $1 a pound, so they're paying $30 a bushel or $28 a bushel, which is reasonable. But if you go to a farmer's market, that's another customer base that's willing to pay a little bit higher price. So there, the farmers have been getting $3-4 a pound for beans. If you're early with beans, like I said with the high tunnel beans, we have some folks getting $5 a pound for beans. So it's a profitable crop, and you're looking at a crop that can produce 8 to 10 tons per acre. If you had a quarter acre of beans, you'd have more than enough to handle. But it's a high, we've talked about this, it's a high yielding food crop. So if you want a lot of food for a limited amount of space where you can make it grow up instead of down, beans are the crop for you. But so I think either, there's all sorts of options here. I mean, growing them in tunnels for early production, sort of tapping into that early high price, maybe having a field of beans that you can open up to the folks in the county or in your area that can come in and pick. Either way works.
Cool. We're always wanting to try more ways to bring some income on some of those small farms. Bill, kind of interested today. This is maybe an open-ended questions, but where have you found some of these heirloom varieties, or how do you locate them? People contact you, or you go have you went scouring around the countryside for these?
Both, but let me add one thing to what Lewis just said. We sold all of our beans last summer at $5 a pound at the Berea market and the Lexington market, and could probably have gotten more than that, but not even once have we had people complain about the price. And we get $4 and $5 a pound for the tomatoes as well, the heirloom tomatoes as well. But thanks to the modern internet, when we first got it put on the map, it was an article about us in the Rural Kentuckian magazine, the RACC magazine. And we got, in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, we got 86 letters from people wanting to know how to locate heirloom beans and offering to bring me beans. And we had people from several counties drive to our farm and bring bean seeds to me. And then it just mushroomed from that point on. And especially when when that article was circulating and all the states surrounding Kentucky, people were giving it the article to friends, and then people were contacting me, and I think they had our mailing address on it. But then after that, I've gone to the Asheville Farmers Market, and when a lot of heirloom beans are in season, and one of the older guys who died a few years ago at 96, I put him in my original book. I call him Clive Whitt, the Dean of Beans. He had retired school administrator, but he was one of the charter members of the Asheville Farmers Market. And every time he saw me coming, he would invite me back and let me pick out the riper beans to save for seed. And then I had a new variety on my hand. And typically he would tell me how about where I might be able to locate them, but he didn't always know. And he said there was one bean that he was trying to locate, which was the Lazy Wife Greasy. And he knew it was from Madison County, North Carolina. And so I was attending the funeral not too long after that of my uncle, 87-year-old uncle, and his wife's niece was at the funeral. And we, at all public occasions, including funerals, one of the subjects that brought up is seeds. And so she said, I can send you some of those. I know where you can get them. And so in a few days, she sent me some of the beans, and I've been growing the Lazy Wife Greasy ever since then. And she also later sent me a smaller Lazy Wife Greasy, and I've been growing the two. And I think they're both on our website right now. But then I visited, you'll notice in the lot of the photographs in the first book, Saving Seeds, Preserving Taste, a lot of them are of people in their 90s and even early hundreds that I have visited to collect seeds from. And I've hardly ever met anyone who wasn't anxious to share their seeds. That's an Appalachian trait. Once in a while, you'll meet somebody. Then I had the Whitey Swanger Greasy, which is on their website, from near my home in North Carolina. There was a family that lived in the national forest. The government had bought their land and would allow them to leave there the remainder of their lives. And the husband was a noted moonshiner, and he grew a lot of corn and had very few, if any, livestock. But he grew a lot of corn, and his wife grew greasy beans in that. And one of her husband's regular customers said, asked her if she would give him a start of her greasy beans, and she refused. So he went into the cornfield that night and liberated some of those seeds, started growing his own beans, and that is the Whitey Swanger Greasy Bean. If anybody's interested in buying that, you can find that on our website too.
Oh, well, maybe we can call that.
That's the only time I've known of someone refusing to share their seeds.
We can call that. We can write a small book, Greasy Beans and Moonshine. How about that?
Right.
Doesn't get much more Carolina than that, JJ.
Greasy Beans and Moonshine.
Hey JJ, don't
Yes.
just love the names of some of these old time varieties like Lazy Wife. You know, these are not woke names. I mean, these are old time names that people just chose the name, and that's what they
Yeah, that's what Bill was telling us.
In my experience, most beans are are named after women because they would be the ones who would notice the mutant bean, would save it from that one vine, try it out next summer, and if it bred true, then they would share it with family and friends. And then it would typically be named after the woman who discovered it. On the other hand, I have more tomatoes named after men than I do after women because they might have been the ones who noticed particular traits like the Vincent Watts tomato. He worked on it 52 summers and finally it became named after him. But it's very interesting the way beans have gotten their names. A lot of them are family beans, community beans, and somebody mentioned a while ago the turkey craw bean, and the turkey craw is mainly in the three-corner area of Cumberland Gap, Kentucky, Virginia, and Tennessee, and it's the dominant heirloom bean in that radius there, probably a 30-mile radius. And I got a lot of beans from that area. And then I started with my mother's collection of 20-some heirloom beans, and she was, until the day she died, she was still collecting beans and saving them. And after she died, my sister, she only had one freezer in her life after we finally got electricity, and somebody got a freezer for her. My uncle bought a freezer for her basically to store butter in, but she stored her bean seeds in there. And long after her death, my sister, who had inherited the house that I was raised in, had finally defrosted that refrigerator, and she discovered some seeds on the bottom of it. And she called me and asked me if I'd like them to come and get them. And so I drove down to North Carolina and picked them up, brought them back to Kentucky, and I had 100% germination on seeds that had been in her freezer for 35 years. So that sold me on the idea of keeping beans frozen. They'll last indefinitely as long as they're in an airtight container.
Bill, tell us real quick, how do you are on heirlooms.org.
Right.
How does, if anyone out there wants to order seeds, how do they do that?
You can order it from the website. And there is a thing on there saying how to order. And
Do you
then
have
the seed catalog.
do you have a physical catalog, or is it all online?
It's all online. Yeah, we've never been able to afford a paper catalog. I know a lot of others, a lot of other seed companies do have one that is not online. Baker Creek has one. By the way, we got started before Baker Creek did. We got started before Southern Exposure. And I was saving seeds long before Seed Savers Exchange out in Decorah, Iowa, was saving seeds. It was good to see them start, but a lot of people who sell seeds or seeds that they have gotten from my collection, they come here and look through my freezers that I used to have, and my son has them now, and collect the seeds, and then they would start advertising them on their own catalogs. But a lot of people still buy them, the same ones from us.
Look, I want to go back to Lewis just for a minute, kind of hitting on that same theme with Bill. I'm assuming a lot of you sell at the Morgantown farmers market up there. Is there are people really surprised when they try some of if they're used to either ones they traditionally grow in the garden or store-bought beans, and then they try some of these heirloom varieties? Maybe tell us any stories of people that are really surprised about how much better they taste.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of folks that don't know how to cook beans. There's a generation of people that are not cooking much, so you got that. So you almost have to tell them how they're cooked, like Bill was saying with the slow cooked with ham or bacon drippings or something like that. And most people are just used to microwave, and just doing a quick thing like that. So there were some folks that had never tried half runners before that bought them off some of the growers we were working with that sold sold at the Morgantown market plus some other markets. And then the farmer told them how to cook them, and they were just, really, really come back for more. I mean, they loved them. They came back to buy the next week, and so they kept buying. I think that's it. If you try them, you cook them, or can them, or freeze them, you're going to love them. I mean, you're going to be back for more. There's a market out there, not just the old time folks that know what they are, but there's new people that have never tried them before. It's like Bill was saying. I mean, they think a bean is just that stringy little filet bean that they see at a restaurant, and that's not what a bean is. That's not what a bean is. So I think we have a whole untapped customer base out there, not only in our own state, but also people that come into the state that want to buy food that we eat here in Appalachia. But yeah, we were freezing beans, so we took these same varieties, we froze them, and they're excellent frozen. So you could freeze them and sell them to restaurants, or other types of institutional markets like schools. So there's a market there. It's just, you have to decide what your most profitable market option is for them. But yeah, I mean, I just, one thing I want to say, what Bill was saying about the hybrid beans. The thing that I've seen the trend on these hybrid bush beans is they've been getting extra dark green. They've been just increasing the chlorophyll content on the pods, and people are just been buying beans by sight. I mean, they think if it's extra dark green, they think it's nutritious. Well, what protein in a pod. I think these extra dark green beans, these high chlorophyll beans that they sell, which are hybrids, of course, they're no match for these heritage heirloom beans in flavor and in yield. And once people find out how good they taste and buy things based on taste and nutrition rather than just what it looks like, the customers will be there too. And seed costs are going up. Everything's going up, but seed costs are going up this year. Hybrid seed costs are going up. So the more people we have growing these old time varieties and saving their own seed, the better they'll be, because it's hard to find some of these varieties, and so people need to grow them themselves, eat what they grow, and save the seed for next year or to give to somebody else.
Yeah, Lewis, have you had a few seed swaps with people come in and trading the heirloom seeds?
I tell you, I got to get down to the Eastern Kentucky seed swap, Bill. I've been invited down there. I guess this COVID issues prevented me from coming down to the big seed swap in Eastern Kentucky there. But we've had a few. We've had some in our local libraries around the state. We've had several at the Small Farms Conference when we met in person last time, which was 2 years ago. At the State Master Gardener Conference about 2 weeks ago, we had an informal seed swap. I always bring a box of seeds, and I'm kind of like Bill, even though I don't get anything back, sometimes I like people to give me seed that they've been saving. It's one direction. I usually almost always give them seed, and hopefully they'll like the seed that I'm giving them, and they'll give me something that they've been saving seed from. But the seed swaps that is an incredible way to get these seeds distributed to people that can't find them. They can't find them at the local garden center, but having a seed swap at the library, there are seed libraries around West Virginia, and I know there's probably quite a few throughout Appalachia, but doing seed swaps at a public library or at conferences or workshops is an excellent way to do that. So people love getting seed, and I'd like to get more seed back. So I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, Bill, tell us about this seed swap you have in Eastern Kentucky.
Well, we have one in Berea. It's moving back from Tennessee to Berea this fall, the first Saturday in October. And they have one at Pikeville the first Saturday in April, and just recently had it earlier this month. And I think they had about 500 people there for that from
Wow.
6 or 7 states, but we've had as many as 300. And when we had it ours at our farm here, from 17 states, from as far away as California and the state of Washington, people flying in to attend these seed swaps. And our seeds are especially popular out in Idaho, Oregon, and Washington, which is where so many Appalachian people migrated to be in the timber industry in the early 1900s. But seed swaps are there's the 2 here in Kentucky, and I don't know of any other particular ones right now, but there are a lot of seed libraries, and people, and they have started to become popular too. Of course, this is also a lot of people want to start growing seeds simply because it's the movement at the time, but there are some that get interested in it in so doing, and I think more our seed sales during the first year of COVID went up 300%, and even more than that this year, the current year that we're in. They are really booming, and we've sold out of several varieties. And my son is coming up in just a few minutes. We're gonna grow 2 acres here, and then he's gonna grow some in Tennessee as well, and to try to catch up with the market. It's amazing how much heirlooms are catching on now. And I don't know, probably the commercial seeds are moving on too, but certainly heirloom seeds are.
Yeah. Evan, do we have any questions from the audience?
Not that I see in the chat box or on Facebook Live, but last week we didn't see the Facebook Live till about noon. There's a question.
Brandy, we've heard that you're a graduate of Brea College. You have any comments on our heirloom projects here? Anyways, Bill, before you take off, tell us a little bit about this Josephine Jackson variety, how it came about, and why it's so popular.
Well, all I know is it's from Pike County, and I don't remember who sent it. I'd have to look on the website and see where it came from or who sent it. We try to keep the donor. We try to keep a little bit of information on the person who sent them to us originally, but all I remember is that one is from Pike County, Kentucky, which is right there adjacent to West Virginia. So it may be from West Virginia, you don't know.
Yeah, yeah, I think there are some varieties that have crossed the state lines a little bit.
Yeah,
I tell you, I mean, what we liked about it, Bill, and like I said, I'm not sure everybody has seen what we've seen on it, but we liked it because it was earlier, kind of an early. It set pods earlier, and we actually got two flushes of harvest off of it. It would bloom and keep producing. Then it would kind of shut down like a lot of them do when it gets real hot, and then we'd have another flush of flowers coming on in late summer. So we were picking it up till mid-October as a green bean. So it was one of our favorites. Like I said, I think for some of the folks that like a smaller pod that looks more like a small, a traditional half runner, it's a real good replacement for some of these other half runners that people have been disappointed with. But JJ, before we leave, maybe Bill could talk a little bit about heirloom tomatoes a little bit. I mean,
Okay.
What are some of the most popular heirloom tomatoes that you've seen in Appalachia? We've been working with Mortgage Lifter a little bit here in West Virginia. That there's 2 strains of Mortgage Lifter in West Virginia. The Logan County one that we got from the AC Biles group family, and then there's the Essler Mortgage Lifter from Putnam County that is another strain. So Mortgage Lifter is popular through Appalachia. I know your company or your organization sells a lot of heirloom tomatoes, but there's a real demand for heirloom tomatoes too. So that's been a good market for producers.
Yeah, Bill, can you tell us a little bit about any of the the heirloom tomato varieties or some other crops?
Let me show one photograph first. This is one of my great granddaughters learning to string beans when she was 4 years old. We tried to get them started as early as possible. But the mortgage lifter, a fella, I called him, he called me just yesterday. He's sending me some seeds, and he was originally from Ohio, but he's living in Florida now. He's 81. He's sending me some seeds of Radiator Charlie's mortgage lifter. I have the story of Radiator Charlie from one of his nephews, I think, in the first book, The Saving Seeds, Preserving Taste. But the heirloom tomatoes are very, very popular right now, and we grow almost all heirlooms in our high tunnel. We'll be selling them tomorrow. We won't be selling the tomatoes tomorrow. We're selling tomato plants tomorrow. We're growing a lot of heirloom tomato plants in our greenhouse, and we're growing them in their high tunnel, and they should start coming in next week. But the Claude Brown Yellow Giant is from Pike County, Kentucky. It gets up to 3 pounds. The Willard Wynn Yellow German tomato is from Harlan County, Kentucky. And I've got some that'll weigh a pound already on them in my high tunnel. And but they won't be ripe for another 2 weeks. But then we got the blackberry tomato, which is very dark, and it's from Garrett County, Kentucky. And what I try to do is keep up all the information from the people who've given them to me. And usually it's, in most cases, it has been a man who worked on it for decades and just selecting each year. That's the land of Vincent Watts tomato. He worked on it 52 summers. And it is just selecting the seeds of the best for disease resistance, flavor, and texture. And the tomatoes on their website, I think most of them have a little bit of a description with it. If you click on it, you'll find who gave it to us. But the heirloom tomatoes are extremely popular right now, but possibly more popular than beans. I don't know. More people buy tomatoes from us at the farmers market than buy beans. Although we have sort of convinced a lot of them to go ahead with beans too. And I'll always try to teach them how to cook them. I show them how to string them. A lot of people, fully adult, have never strung a bean, and they need to know how. And so we show them.
Yeah, but you can learn at any age, that's for sure.
Yeah, we tried to start our
We
great
call-
at 3 or 4, but
we call stringing beans therapy, horticulture therapy. It's
yes,
There you go.
therapeutic.
right. It's very therapeutic.
Well, that's right in there for mindfulness and all that stuff with stress. Isn't that right, Evan?
I do have a question, JJ.
Go ahead.
I don't think that's been asked. What are your all's favorite heirloom bean and tomato?
My favorite greasy bean is the Lazy Wife greasy, and my favorite cut short would be probably the Frank Barnett cut short, or my mother's Margaret Best greasy cut short. There are cut shorts, and then there are greasy cut shorts. But my favorite tomato would be the Vincent Watts tomato.
Awesome.
Interesting. Lewis?
Well, on the heirloom tomatoes, I like the mortgage lifter. We had a nice red mortgage lifter, which we're still growing for seed and distributing to to folks, and I liked it. So there is a mortgage lifter that is directly from West Virginia that we like. I also like I kind of like low acid tomatoes or sweeter tomatoes. So I like the hillbilly, West Virginia hillbilly tomato, which is a bicolored tomato. It's kind of a sweeter tomato. I think that's similar to the Wynn tomato that Bill was talking about. Willard Wynn tomato that's a red and yellow, or what they call sort of a pineapple type tomato. They're good flavored, and there's a variety called Kellogg's Breakfast from West Virginia. Somebody from Michigan took it out of West Virginia and worked on it for years, and then but it has its heritage in West Virginia. It's a yellow to orange beefsteak tomato that's really good. Really good. And I like Oxheart tomatoes too. I think Oxhearts are really good good tomatoes. So there's some really good Oxheart varieties that we like. So yeah, on the beans, I agree with you. I like the cut short beans. I wish more people would buy cut short beans. That's a problem. But I do like the non-tough and the Jackson half runners.
Oh, cool. And of course, as we start to run out of time here, I have a question that I always ask. My dad always said there's two types of music, country and Western. So I want to start with Bill. Are you a country music fan? And if so, who is your favorite artist?
Well, my favorite artist was my first cousin prior to his death, Carol Best, who is a noted banjo picker. And when he was in the Navy, he was in Tokyo, Japan, and he was a guest artist in some Japanese symphony orchestras long before the banjo was expected in Carnegie Hall. But my father was a country fiddler, and so I like country music very much, very much. But like I say, my favorite artist was my cousin, Carol Best. He can still be found on some YouTube things where some of his live concerts were put on there.
Oh, what about you, Lewis?
Oh, you still ask the same question, huh?
That's right.
Yeah, at least to know you still ask the same question every time I see you. I like the classic country, and but I think bluegrass is my favorite. And if you get to Owensboro, Kentucky, you go to Bluegrass Hall of Fame. But I prefer bluegrass, but definitely like classic country. Not contemporary. So classic country is the way to go, not this new stuff. So.
You saying you're a big Bill Monroe fan, or Doc Watson, or which way you going there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the all those groups. I mean, any bluegrass group is Doyle Lawson. There's just really great bluegrass groups. But yeah, I like traditional music like that. So.
Good, and of course. Evan, he's probably fringing. If you can see that, the throwback artist is John Denver. This was of course, of course, he's famous for a song that talks about a river that's not actually in West Virginia, but
It goes through the Eastern Panhandle.
Yeah,
it's partly in West Virginia.
Partly in West Virginia, but I collect albums, and of course the John Denver one I may have overpaid. It's a little scratched up, but it's still played. So all those crackles and pops and stuff that just adds texture. That's character, as my nieces say. That's vintage.
Yeah.
So do we have any more questions? Again, I want to thank Bill Best from the Sustainable Mountain Ag Center, and of course our own Lewis Jett, our commercial horticulture specialist for WVU Extension, for being our special guests. Evan, do we have any other questions?
Not that I see on Facebook or in the chat.
Okay. And again, hope everyone enjoys this. This will be available on our YouTube channel. And of course, the people can also post comments on Facebook. Just reminding everyone that programs and activities offered by West Virginia University Extension Service are available to all persons without regard to race, color, sex, disability, religion, age, veteran status, political belief, sexual orientation, national origin, and marital or family status. And again, we are Mountaineer Farm Talk, the big voice of West Virginia agriculture, and hope everyone enjoyed our great talk on heirloom vegetables. Bill, thank you again for being on the program.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Good. We'll have to make it down to that big seed swap in October.
Yes, yeah, October,
Yeah.
the first Saturday in October. Yeah.
Oh,
I
and
think
real
I can
quick,
do that.
and thank you again, Lewis. Bill, what the 2 books, can we get those on the heirloom.org? Order those? Or where do we?
Yes, you can order both of these on our website.
Okay. How much are they?
They're both, well, this one in hardback is 28. This one is in paperback is 23. And
Okay.
it's got several. The first book from the Ohio University Press has several stories of West Virginians in there. Dot
Oh, good.
Montgillian, who some of you might have known at some time. She's been dead for a number of years now. Most of the photographs in here, unfortunately, are people who are now deceased that I managed to capture.
Oh,
They were still living.
Yeah, and anyone that mentions the word Mountaineer Farm Talk gets 50% off, right? Okay. All right. Well, you guys enjoy, or everyone enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you next week. We'll be talking about parasite control with Dr. Scott Bowdridge from WVU.
Sheep
So,
and goats.
yep. Thank you again. And this is Mountaineer Farm Talk. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank
Hi,